What's up, YouTube? I'm the homie Joshua. Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today I'm going to talk about my experience when I was living and working in East Palo Alto doing community work. And I was shot at on multiple occasions, actually, by different groups of people. And so let's set the stage for the first incident. And this is obviously not the first time I've been shot at. It's not even the first time that I've been shot at since I've been home from prison. But it is the first time that I was shot at doing community work, right? And so I was working with an organization that's gone by many names over the years, Five by, Live in Peace, Young Life, etc. But always the same basic core group of people. And we had a house on the dead end of beach that folks from EPA would be familiar with. And inside was a recording studio for a while. And so I worked predominantly with the Latino Chicano community in East Palo Alto, but the organization I worked with had a long legacy of working overwhelmingly with the Black community and with the poly community in EPA. And I worked with them too, right? But so at this recording studio, there was a young man who lived with me, and I actually had legal custody of him for a while. He was pretty well known around East Palo Alto. I'm gonna call him Junior. Not the little Junior that raps, but a different one. And so, and Junior was rapping, right, along with a handful of other youngsters. And when I say youngsters, I don't mean that in a demeaning way, and I certainly don't mean that in a sense of like I was their big homie and this is my youngsters, because it wasn't like that. It's just they were significantly younger, right? You're talking high school age. And so anyways, Junior would do some recording at the studio, and he was a Northerner, right? He was known as a Northerner. And he wasn't really, at that time, running around too much in the streets. I mean, he was out there still, but he had been improving, right? And so he wanted to go record a song, and he was scheduled to record it. Part of my role there was I worked in various schools, right, doing classes, and most of the time they'd bring me in to work with the quote-unquote gang members, right, Northerners and Southerners. And so that was the case at EPA High. And at EPA, I had two classes. I had one class with Northerners and one class with Southerners that the school identified people as and put them in the class. And so that was kind of the last step before they got kicked out. And so in my Southerner class, a new guy had come, and his name was Cartoon. And he was originally from East Palo Alto, and then he had moved somewhere like I think Sacramento or Stockton or something and become affiliated as a Southerner, and then came back to EPA and still identified as a Southerner, but wasn't particularly running around the streets like that, right? So we built a rapport, because even though, you know, my background obviously is as a Norteño, both in and out of prison, I was doing community work with everybody, right? And I was trying to help others move in excellence. And so Cartoon wanted to do a song, and he had heard that we had a recording studio. And so he gets at me and he says, "Hey man, I want to do this song in Spanish for this girl, and can I go record?" Well, Junior was scheduled to record at the same time, right? And I was like, "Look man, I already have somebody scheduled, but let me get at them." And so I get at June, and I was like, "Hey, you know this fool Cartoon?" He goes, "Yeah, I know you're talking about." And I said, "You know, he wants to record at the same time. Are you cool with that?" And he says, "Were you gonna be there?" I said, "Of course I'm gonna be there." Right? And he's like, "I mean, as long as dude's cool and doesn't pull no funny stuff, man, I mean, I guess." Right? And he wasn't super excited about it, but again, we had a good relationship. He lived with me, and so he was like, "You know, that's fine," right? So I go pick up Junior. Junior lives with me, so I take Junior and I go pick up Cartoon, right? And he lives on the other side of the ramp. And I go pick him up. They, you know, meet and get introduced in the car, and there's some tension there. And I had given Cartoon a heads up, right? There was no surprises here. And so there was some tension, but they were both respectful, right? And we go to the studio, and so Cartoon's trying to record this song, but frankly, he's not very good at creating music, right? He's not a very good rapper. He's trying to do it in Spanish, and so I'm limited in the degree that I can help him. Junior's fluent in Spanish. And so next thing I know, they're kind of helping each other. And I'm just backing up observing, right? And it's just the three of us in there. And nobody else besides the three of us know that this is happening. And so next thing you know, they're talking, and they realize that when they were younger, their places actually backed up to each other. And they knew each other, and they hung out when they were young. And that's before either one of them got affiliated. And so they're laughing and talking, and they're getting along. And so Junior's helping them. The song get done. And Junior says, hey, man, why don't you come play soccer with us tonight? So I had also created a midnight soccer and basketball program at this gym. At the time, it was called the Lord's Gym. It wound up being the gym for Phoenix Academy later. And so I oversaw the development of that gym, which in reality at the time was, you know, we had a mat and it was a basketball court, right? Indoor. And so right there on Bay Road, for those familiar with the town. And so I had started doing midnight basketball, midnight soccer there. East Palo Alto, I had a midnight basketball program before, and it got shut down. And then I said, well, let's have midnight soccer as well, because we have a large, you know, Mexican population, Chicano population, and they play soccer more than basketball, let's just be honest. And so that's what we did. And Junior and a bunch of youngsters were a part of that. And all of them, for the soccer part, identified as Northerners, or were certainly, you know, if they had to pick, they leaned more that way. And that was just the demographics of East Palo Alto. North outnumbered South, you know, 100 to 1, right? Like there was really no comparison. And so, so we go, you know, Cartoon's like, yeah, well, I'll go play soccer, right? And I'm like, wow, here we go. And I remember when I dropped off Cartoon at the spot, I told both of them, look, man, I want you guys to understand what just happened here, right? And how unique and special this is. But also understand, you know, from a faith perspective, right? The devil's going to be working overtime here, because this is a big deal. Was that going to bring peace to East Palo Alto or whatever? Of course not, right? But it had the potential to be transformative, at least with these two individuals, you know? And so, so anyways, I drop them off, and then I go to pick them up for soccer. And I go all around, right? I go to the mid, I'm on, you know, Addison, I go over towards Alberni, I'm going through the gardens, and I'm picking up, and I'm driving this red truck. It's a red Suburban, one of the big, large ones, old one, right? And it's very well known in the city of East Palo Alto. It's been in EPA longer than I had. The time frame of this, to rewind, is, let's say, all of this happens between, say, 2007 and 2011. And I could narrow it down more, but I'm intentionally choosing not to, right? If people were around at that time, then you know, they probably know. But so the truck is predominantly known in the black community, because the team that I worked with had a long history working with predominantly the black community, not exclusively, and then also with the poly community. And so part of the reason they brought me on was because of kind of the natural relationships with the Chicano Mexican community, right? So I go pick up all these dudes in this red truck, and it's not very well known, like I said, in the Latino community. It had been around, but it didn't have the reputation, right? And the reputation I had in the black community was the team that I worked with had done a lot of work, had responded to a lot of violence. So it wasn't like a tough guy reputation, right? It was a community workers, right? Dependable, trustworthy people that were there for the community and nothing else. And so, but I was driving it now, right? So I go and I pick up all these cats that identify as Northerners, and I let them know, hey, are you guys cool if I go pick up this dude Cartoon? And some of them are like, man, right? And I know that Cartoon has problems. And I know that the Northerners particularly don't like him, because he kind of struts his stuff in a way that other Southerners from East Palo Alto don't generally do, right? And not to put them down, and I'm not gangbanging or anything else, of course, but he carried himself a little different. And that got the attention of the Northerners, right? But he wasn't looking for problems. He wasn't, you know, he didn't really kick it with those dudes much. He was just trying to, you know, graduate school and move on with his life, right? And he claimed this other city. He didn't even claim East Palo Alto. And so they were like, I guess. And mind you, bro, they got shirts with red paños on them. They got red shoes. They got, you know, none of them are making any effort to show that they're not, you know, representing what they represent. And I wouldn't expect them to be honest. And just like I wouldn't have been surprised if Cartoon got in the car wearing a bunch of blue, but he didn't. He got in wearing like gray, right? And so, but he had this hat that he would wear all the time that said 916 on it, I believe. Or said Cartoon on the bill, right? And that's relevant. So I said, hey, can we pick this dude up? He wants to play soccer. And everybody's like, man, as long as you're there, bro. Yeah, and you know, as long as he ain't coming on no funny stuff, right? Like, he tries to act up, it's a wrap. But as long as it's just soccer, right? And it was an understanding that when I brought you somewhere or when I set something up, that was you know, that was not an environment to carry out street beefs, right? It was kind of my goal was to always have it kind of be a neutral spot. Not expecting that the people in that space would be neutral anywhere else necessarily, but at least for the time that you're here, you know, let that stuff ride. And so they were cool with it. And I'm talking like 10, 11 people in the truck, right? Like, we were thick. And so we go pick them up, and I stop at the G Market, which was my corner store that I always went to because it's right by my house. And I had to get some cigarettes, and, you know, somebody wanted a candy bar or whatever. So, you know, you stop at the store, bro, everybody gets out, right? And the G Market has grown over the years. I was out there not too long ago, and it's a lot bigger store, set up a lot different. At the time, it was pretty small. And so in the parking lot's pretty big. So I go inside, I get my cigarettes, right? And all these kids are standing outside the truck. Some of them go inside, some of them are just posted. And I come out, and as I come out, I see somebody passing me in the doorway, right? I'm like, what's up, bro? What's up? It's, you know, it's all good, right? This is a Latino dude. And, you know, it's cool. And I kind of recognize, I didn't know him, but I kind of recognized him, right? And I had noticed the car that he got out of. I'm not going to describe it, but I had noticed the car he got out of, and I had noticed some people still in that car. And I noticed that they had an interest in what was going on by my truck, which was parked almost right next to them. But the people that I had with me are fairly well-known people, right? They were youngsters, but they got a lot of family, and they've been running around. And so, you know, East Palo Alto is a small community. Everybody knows everybody. So anyways, I wasn't thinking anything of it because I'm also not in that same mindset of when I was running the streets, right? So some could say I was kind of caught slipping to a degree. And so I go get inside my truck. Everybody gets in. Junior's actually the last one to shut the door, right? He's in the back. He shuts the door. Boom. Or I think he's in the front. He shuts the door. And when everybody had gotten out, Cartoon had gotten out as well. And this is not an area that's friendly to Southsiders, right? None of East Palo Alto really is, but especially everywhere on that side of 101. You know, West Park, that side of the ramp, you know, they were kind of sprinkled around, but and could move about, you know, at least a little bit. But in the rest of East Palo Alto, not necessarily. And so, and it's late, right? It's 10, 11 o'clock at night probably. And so everybody gets in, and I go to back up and pull off. And I hear pop, 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 right? And I could see the light a little bit, you know? And I'm like, the motherfucker's shooting at us, is what I said. And they're like, yeah, and they're ducking, right? And I was like, shit, so I skirted off, right? And I went towards the little frontage road that's right there by the freeway, for those familiar. I went that way. And I hit the corner, and I paused real quick, and I was like, hey, everybody cool, sound off, right? Everybody in the truck sounded off. Nobody was hit. I was like, all right, cool. But then my old instincts, so to speak, kick in, and I'm pissed. Like, I'm taking this very personal. How dare you shoot at my truck? And so I circle back, right? I circle around the mobile homes, and I start driving up that way. And sure enough, there's the car that shot at me. They're coming, and I catch them. And I'm smashing after them, right? And they're skirting. They ain't shooting no more. They're dipping. And they probably thought I was strapped, right? But I wasn't. Nobody in the car had any weapons. And so I'm smashing after them. And I don't know exactly what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to run them off the road and get out and beat them up and take their gun. I was pissed. And then there was that little voice inside that was like, hey, what example are you setting right now? Right? And I was like, fuck. Because I advocate nonviolence. You know what I mean? Obviously. And so I turned and came back around the block, and I came by Pulgas, and I went to my house, right, on Verbena. And I parked it across the street from my house and down a little bit, right? Like I said, I've been through this before. Everybody hops out. I look at the truck. There's 3 dents. No, there's a dent in the bumper. There's 3 dents right by the gas cap, right? So the little lever where you're going to put your gas, the little door. There's 3 right there. Bing, bing, bing. And then the window above it, the backside window on the passenger side, has this big spider web crack, but no hole, right? And had the bullet, like when you look at the angle of the bullets hitting the truck, you would imagine the angle of the bullet hitting the window was the same. And the truck, it doesn't have holes in it, but it's got some good chunky dents from the bullet. So there's no real reason that 5th bullet didn't break the window. And had it done that, you know, they weren't shooting with a cannon, right? But had it broke that window, people are getting hit. You know what I mean? And so I was like, woo. And the kids were laughing, oh, it's bulletproof. But they're also stressed, right? And I had asked at one point in the car, man, who was that? And they're talking in the back. They're like, but I know who that was. I know who that was. And in reality, it was a relative of somebody in the car. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that. But so I pull up, I get everybody out, I bring them in the house, I put them in the backyard of the house, I take everybody's cell phones. I take all the youngsters' cell phones. Nah, bro. Because I already know they're going to be on their phones calling people, and this is going to escalate potentially very quickly. And I don't want that, right? And so then I get in a different car, right? I had a few cars at the time. So I get in a different car, and I shoot to the G Market real quick, and I pick up bullet shells, right? Because I know where they're at when they hit. You know what I mean? I get it all. So I pick up the bullet shells real quick, and I take them and I dispose of them. Because I don't want nobody going to jail. Even though they shot at me, I don't want nobody going to jail. So the police respond. The angle that it happened at was just outside the security camera of the G Market, right? So they didn't tell who, you know, they couldn't tell what vehicles were involved, but they did see the truck. And again, the truck is well known. So they call the owner of the truck, who's my people that I work with. And it's like, man, what happened? I said, we got clapped at. You know what I mean? We got clapped at on the way to midnight basketball, midnight soccer. And so I canceled midnight soccer for that day. I changed my clothes. I remember I was wearing like a black shirt and a black beanie. And I put on a white hoodie with a white beanie, and I jumped in my little tan pickup truck. And I took the youngsters home a couple at a time, aside from the ones that live with me. I took them home a couple at a time in the truck and gave them back their phones and was like, hey, just be cool, man. I'm going to figure this out, right? But be cool. Nobody got hurt. It's not a big deal. The police had called the registered owner of the truck, and they were like, I don't know what happened. I'm not even driving it, right? And so, and it's East Palo Alto, and at the time, there's a lot of shootings. There's a lot of violence, man. So they're not pressing the issue on nothing, right? They really don't care. And so, so that's that, right? And then the next day, they're telling me, hey, man, don't drive the truck. Like, the truck is hot now. It got shot at. I'm like, fuck that. I'm driving it. I'm going to find who shot my damn truck. And I don't want to hurt them, right? I mean, part of me does, if I'm being honest. But I don't want to hurt them. I want to be like, bro, what was you thinking? Why are you busting at me? Right? Like, I'm not the target. And so through my own little investigation, I come to find out that they had seen that dude cartoon, and there was a green light on him beyond just the normal, you know, kind of on-site gangbanging. There were some folks that really wanted his helmet. And so these folks seen him, and they busted. technically speaking, they could have busted when he was outside the car and actually hit him. If you know, so I don't know exactly why they dealt with it the way that they did. I saw who did it. I know who it was. But that's neither here nor there, right? And so that situation got resolved non-violently, right? And that was that. And so, and I was able to model to them, right? Like, this isn't about like being a punk or whatever, right? And there's no reason to call the police. The police are not helpful to our communities, right? So that's a non-starter, right? I'm not gonna weaponize the police against my own folks, right? And I don't mean my own folks in terms of Northerners or Southerners or whatever, just my own people. But I'm also not gonna go shed blood because somebody busted at me, right? There was a time I would have. There was a time that I did, you know. But there's other ways to handle it, right? And so I was fortunate in a sense to be able to have that opportunity to model that to those young folks, right? That you can endure the trials that come with living in the hood, to be honest, right? Shit happens. But you don't have to engage like that, right? So that's one incident. The other involved my house. My house was shot at on multiple occasions. And so, and this, I didn't, you know, I'll leave it to you guys in the comments, man, of what maybe I could have done different. But so to set the stage for this one, I always had a lot of people living in my house, right? And then I had some black folks living there and mostly Raza living there and some adults like parents and, you know, all kinds of shit, man. And so the young folks I had by my house overwhelmingly were Northerners, identified as Northerners, you know, whatever. And some were highly active in the streets, right? And others not so much. So on my street, on the 100 block of Rabina, at this end, on the opposite side of the street, is a Southsider house, right? There was a green Mustang out front. Just Juan Pablo, all them dudes lived over there, right? The other side of the street, on that same side of the street, on the other side by the dead end, was Jason, his brother Gerardo, them, right? So all of them pretty well-known Southsiders. And that was probably the only street in all of EPA, the only one block where you had two houses of them. And I'm right in the middle, but on the opposite side of the street, right? So, and that had always been the case since I moved in. And I had talked to them, right? Gerardo was in my class at EPA High. Juan Pablo was in a class that I had, right? And yeah, there was Northerners at my house all the time. They lived there. They were out front. They was kicking it. Now, nobody was out there with red baños, right? But there was some red belts and there was some red flannels and that sort of thing. But they knew. Anybody that came to my house knew. While you're coming to see me or you're leaving from seeing me or you're living at my house, bro, you leave these two houses alone, right? And at the same time, I had made that request of them, right? Hey, you're going to see people at my pad. And they might be people that you have personal issues with. But when they're at my house, it's a no-go, right? Because I'm not getting down that way. And I offered the same hand and the same resources and everything to the Southsiders as I did to the Northerners. I didn't discriminate whatsoever. And so, again, though, just based on a numbers game, if I worked with every Northerner in EPA and every Southerner in EPA, I would work with a hell of a lot more Northerners. And so it had been cool for years, right? And there was times like for folks that remember the days of you know, the Skittles car and that kind of stuff, right? So those guys would come and they'd be swerving and high-siding and they'd come through the block flexing, right? But they didn't do anything to those houses, right? And it's not that I controlled them. I was not the big homie. In fact, I had to fight against that idea of being a big homie to them, right? And that's kind of a whole nother story, right? But so it wasn't because I was running shit. I wasn't running nothing. I was trying to help reduce violence and give folks opportunities. That was it. And some accepted it and some didn't. And some respected what I was doing and some didn't. And that was fine, right? So, and again, I got some stories along that line, but that would be a different video. I don't want to distract too much from this because I don't want to make it a long spiel. So one day, right, and I got kids. My kids were born at Stanford because that's where kids are born when you live in East Palo Alto. And so one day, this dude comes riding on a bike. And I had never seen him before. He was an older cat, tatted back, right? Apparently I just got out of prison, and he was a Southsider. And apparently nobody had given him the memo of how things work on my street, right? So out in front of the house is I got two youngsters that are staying with me that are out front playing with my daughter, right? Playing with my oldest, who at the time was just a couple years old. And they're out there playing and fooling around in the front yard. And this dude comes riding by on his bike. And he starts high-siding and he starts throwing up gang signs. So one of the youngsters snatches up my daughter and runs inside the house, right, to make sure that she's safe. I'm not home at the time. The other one reaches behind his back as if he had something. Now, truth be told, he didn't at that moment. But he was flexing, and he was like, bro, go ahead, stop, right? And said some aggressive things to him. Not gang-related, just, bro, I got something for you, right? So dude turned around and rode his bike off, right? He didn't want that smoke. And I was upset with that kid, right? Not for that incident, but, and he's probably gonna watch this. But because the next day, he's in a different part of town, and he sees one of the Southsiders that lives on my street, and he busts at him, right? So, because he's pissed off from the happen. But again, it's not about gangs. It's personal. They disrespected my sacred space, so to speak. And potentially put my child in danger, right? And these youngsters really respected what I was trying to do. And so, yeah, so he busted. And obviously they connect the dots. He was just at my house the day before, had an incident, and he had been at my house plenty of times, had an incident, and now he's busting back. Even though he's not busting back on my street, he's busting back. They come and hit the house, right, at night. And didn't break no windows, doesn't just little, you know, pop, 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 right? And I'm pissed now. Like, here we go. Because I had always been concerned that this was a powder keg that was going to blow. And there was folks that I didn't work with that were not in a place to really want help. They were running the streets, doing what they were doing, hustling, whatever. And we were familiar with each other, and we were cool with each other. There's no love lost on my end because you're engaging in criminal activity or whatever. And they had shown restraint over the years, which I was very thankful for, because again, I wasn't the big homie that could order anything. I could have came out and played that card, but that's not my agenda. My agenda is the homie like I am on the platform, helping others move in excellence, not trying to push a line for no other reason. Well, you can't dance on that. And that's one of the lessons here, right? You can't have one foot in, one foot out, right? You can't be like, hey, I'm the homie from the pen. I'm the homie that got out the shoe. I'm the homie that's a hermano. I'm this. And so you need to listen to me because of who I am in the prison system. Or you need to listen to me for my reputation as you know, a homeboy. But at the same time, I want you to not get in trouble. I want you to not engage in violence. And I want to advocate to you a path different. But I'm lukewarm. I'm flipping back and forth. You can't do that, right? Because something's going to come up where the gang member in you, so to speak, is expected to act a certain way. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay true to this image that you presented of, man, I'm a homeboy just like you guys, but I'm older and wiser, but I still represent the same as you? Are you going to act that way? Or are you going to act as the mentor and the one that's trying to help them avoid trouble? Because you can't be true to both, right? And my thing to them was like, bro, I'm not co-signing your bullshit. I'm not judging you. I still respect you. I still have love for you. But I'm not the dude that's going to be like, yeah, bro, I understand. Go ahead and whack this fool. Even if I do understand the dynamics and I understand the desire, I'm I'm trying to show a different way, and I'm learning a different way myself at the same time, right? So anyways, they come and bust at the house. And I'm like, all right, same thing. I go out and pick up the bullet shells, right? And the cops come and they double park at the end of the street. Then they come by and they knock and they're like, hey, man, you know, shot spotter said there was a shooting right here. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, you know, did you hear any gunshots? I said, East Palo Alto, you hear gunshots all the time, but I don't know, you know, I don't know they were here. Okay, so everything's okay, everybody inside's okay, man, everybody's fine, we're going to bed, you know what I mean? And so they left, and they double parked at the end of the street with their lights off for a little while, which anybody from East Palo Alto knows that's generally what they do. And they sit there for like an hour maybe, and then they take off, right? So the next day I get at the Southsiders, and I'm like, look, bro, this can't continue, right? Like, something has to be resolved here. And I thought that we had come to an understanding. And again, the beef that happens off my street is not my business. But I did feel like it was my business what happened there. So, sure enough, the house gets shot at again. And now, I'm losing a little bit of control. Right? Not control. I shouldn't put it that way. But the respect that some folks that were shooters, to be honest, and were Northerners, that whole idea of, hey, bro, we're going to leave these fools alone because you live there and we respect what you're trying to do. Now that card is flipped, right? And now their feeling is, look, we don't like these dudes anyways. And now they've disrespected your house. They disrespected what you're doing. Like, you ain't even out here pushing that. So not only is it fair game, but we're going to get them. And I attempted to be like, hey, look, I'm going to try to figure something out. But to be honest, some people just never even responded to me, right? Like, they just kind of shut me out. And the couple who did were like, look, it's not on you. This ain't your call. It's our call, right? It's our call. And we really don't care how you want to deal with it. We're going to deal with it the way we want to deal with it. And there's nothing I can do about that. You know, what do you do? What could I do? And so, sure enough, that side of the street gets sprayed very intentionally. And houses get hit and cars get shot up, all kinds of stuff. And they're pissed, right? And rightfully so, but now it looks like I'm at the center of it, right? Because I had told them that I was upset, and I had told them, look, bro, this can't continue like this. And I had told them, to be quite honest, I've had your guys' back while you've been here. You know what I'm saying? You already know, because their houses have been hit before. They've been shot up before, everything, for years, as long as they've lived there. And so I'm like, look, you already know. And there's going to come a time I can't do nothing. And sure that I didn't realize, but I had assumed the time was soon. No, that time was already there. So they get hit. Boom, boom. Now they're mad. I'm doing a thing at juvenile hall or whatever, and I come home and I get a call from my ex, who was my wife at the time. And I got a newborn, right? So I got my baby and I got, you know, a newborn. And the youngsters aren't home. The youngsters that live with me, they're not there, right? And for argument's sake, now there's weapons not too far. And I always knew people that were strapped, and people that were this, and people that were that. And again, there was no judgment on my end. All I did was offer help, right? And offer different paths. If you want to take it, if you don't. If you don't want it today and you want it tomorrow, that's fine. I ain't going nowhere. And so I get a call. These people keep driving by the house, which they have been doing, right? These people keep driving by the house, these particular vehicles. Some of them look familiar from previous incidences, right? And they're talking about the Southsiders. And it's funny because they're not the ones that live on my street, right? So the reason I'm okay mentioning Gerardo, the reason I'm okay mentioning Jason, the reason I'm okay mentioning Juan Pablo is they were not ever doing that. I mean, Jason did it a few times, but he did it a few times over the years just to flex. And then he wound up facing consequences elsewhere around town on a number of occasions. And so I think he was just irritated because people that beat him up and punked him all the time, some of them came by my house. But so they were never a part of any of this. Or if they were, I have no knowledge of it. But my position is they explicitly were not engaged in this, right? So, but there's other people that were, obviously. And so I get a call, and she's panicked, right? And they're slowing down, they're looking, they're double parking in front. What's she gonna do? She's there with 2 babies, right? And that's it. And she's scared. And I'm scared, to be honest. Because my life is my choices, and the work I do and who I work with and everything else, man, that's on me. But now you're starting to bring my family into it. Now you're starting to bring my kids into it. And that is hitting a different chord with me. So I hop on the phone, man. And I'm not proud of this. I hop on the phone and I call another youngster who's aware of what's going on, right? And he's not even banging, to be quite honest. He don't bang. He knows more Northerners than he does Southerners, but he don't bang. But he's with the business, right? Don't get it twisted. He's with the business. And I say, look, bro, I'm really sorry to do this, but I needed somebody trustworthy to call, and somebody that I knew, for one, would hold their mud in more ways than one, right? Would not let anybody harm my ex or my kids, right? And would take whatever steps necessary, and would also, take what comes with that righteously, right? And he had demonstrated that previously in other situations, so I knew he's a stand-up guy all the way around. Which is also why it was hard to make a call. But so I call him and I'm like, hey, fool, these dudes are flexing on my house, man, and I'm not going to be there for like 10, 15 minutes. I'm getting there as fast as I can. Can you do me a favor? Can you grab something and just go over there and make sure they're okay? Don't do anything to anybody else, but quietly just pull up over there and make sure they're okay. Within minutes, there's a handful of people at my house and all of them bangered up, right? But that's nothing to brag about. And I have regretted that since it happened. And I still am in good terms with dude, and I've apologized to him. Like, bro, that wasn't fair of me. Thank you for showing up, but that wasn't fair. But I was stuck and I didn't know what else to do. And that's why I say in the comments, man, if you think there was another way to go about it, I'm open to hear it. And so I get back and I move my ex and my kids to a hotel over there, like, Fremont, Newark area, because I can't run that risk. And then I go and I sit in my living room, and there was a firearm within arm's reach everywhere. There was guns in the trunk for a car that was parked outside. There was guns right by my front door. There was guns everywhere. And a rotation of people around who were ready to do whatever it takes to, to make sure everything's okay. And, when I was young, I'd have got a kick out of that. I'd have been engaged in that. When I was young, I wouldn't have waited. I wouldn't have sat and waited for them to come to me. But I'd been like, yeah, bro, look how we get down. Look at this. And in this case, it was nothing like that. It was shame. Fuck, man. How? I can't fault these youngsters for when this whole incident starts with the dude on a bike. I can't fault them because they're trying to protect my kid. And we're family at this point, right? And we're family to this day. So how can I be mad? And it's the hood. And shit happens in the hood. And for those unfamiliar with environments like that, you're put into situations sometimes that you didn't ask for. and that you don't want, and that there's no easy answers for, and that you don't have time to go sit and contemplate it and make a bunch of phone calls and do an analysis. No. There's a dude pulling up threatening harm. What are you going to do? Because you have that moment to act. And I can't fault them for how they acted. I fault myself for how I acted. But I also don't know what I could have done different. And so, anyways, the house was shot at multiple times. And wound up moving. And not just because of that, right? That was a factor, to be honest. But not just because of that, right? There was, the organization was shutting down because there was some funding issues, and there was a lot of stuff going on. Man, our rent was going up on our house. You know, I was the only breadwinner, right? I made all the money, and my job was over, right? Like I got 2 or 3 days notice that I was going to be without a job. And I got a great severance pay. Like, folks looked out for me within the organization, so I'm not faulting them. I still love them and talk to them often. But it became, you know, unmanageable real quick. But my unemployment was enough to, you know, my unemployment from California was enough to pay the bills in Florida. And that's where my ex was from. So we dipped out there for a while. And I couldn't hang, I couldn't last. I came back to the Bay, right? And I've been to East Palo Alto several times since then, more than several. I haven't lived out there because that was at the same time that this massive gentrification happens and Facebook is built, and so prices went through the roof. But I still have love for the community. And, you know, if you're going to be out there on the front line, so to speak, doing the grimy work, right? Spending time with the shooters, you know what I mean? And praying with them and loving them up close, even when their behavior is not what you would hope that they would be in. There's kind of shit that happens. You're not immune from hood stuff just because you're not engaged in hood activity. And especially when you are engaged in hood activity, just not in a hood sense, right? I was on the block. I was on the street corners. I was dealing with the folks that were active, not in the way people use active now, but like that were in the mix. And again, I got various reactions from them, you know. But I inserted myself into the neighborhood politics of East Palo Alto, and therefore I'm not untouchable. I'm not invincible, you know. And so I don't even fault the folks that clapped at me, right? In any of the situations, they were acting according to their environment. And so there really is no animosity. At the time there was. And especially with my house getting hit, that was less animosity and more fear, you know? I never got back to the gangbang mode. I wasn't like, oh man, F these dudes because they're, you know, fill in the blank. My mind didn't even go there. But it did go in a sense of like, bro, I went to prison for shooting somebody. Like, shooting people is not difficult for me, right? I don't mind it. I actually kind of enjoyed it, to be honest. So there's that part of me. And if you're going to do work in the community, you need to be aware of that. Be aware of your own weaknesses. Be aware of your own demons. Be aware of your own trauma. And how this work can bring that out of you. And what are you going to do about it? And what's your support system going to look like? What's your outlet going to look like? How you going to let some steam out of that balloon before it pops, boy? And because then everybody's going to look and say, oh, you're a hypocrite. Oh, see this? You know, like, folks can't wait to tear you down. And especially can't wait to tear down the work that you do. And again, so that's a spill, man. I'm going to try to keep this short, but once again, I'm the homie Joshua. This is the homie Hangout. If you like this type of content, then it'd be great if you would subscribe, look around, check out other videos. You could become a member of the channel for like $3, and other ways to support. So thank you guys for your time. Be a homie, help others move with excellence, help yourself at the same time. That's the goal.